I want to talk about constants, but before I talk about constants, let's run through the problem or the issue that constants solve. So let's just see what they're used for first. So for example, if I had this simple program where the user is going to type in the amount of hours they worked, and we are going to calculate how much money they made, and we're going to display it in this label. So they are giving me an hours. They are going to enter a number of hours. So I'm going to need a variable to hold the number of hours. And I ask myself, well, hours is going to be a number, so it's going to be an integer or a double. Can they give me a decimal amount of hours? Can you work 7.5 hours? Well, of course you can. You don't have to work full number hours. You can work decimals of hours. So I'll say double hours. Similarly, this program, I'm going to basically tell them how much money they made. So I'm going to need a variable to hold that information. And that's going to be a dollar amount. And anytime I'm working with money, I'm probably going to use a double because money can have decimals. So let's just call this variable profit, whatever. So the user is going to give me a amount of hours, and we're going to do some math to calculate how much money they made. So first I need to get the hours, and the hours that the user is giving me, well, they're going to be in the text box, and it's going to be the text of the text box. Text is a string, hours is a double variable, so I'm going to have to parse it to a double. So we haven't ran into the issue yet of constants. Let's keep going. How do I calculate the profit? Well, if you work 8 hours and you make $10 an hour, you would multiply those two numbers. You would go 8 times 10 equals $80. So in coding, well, I don't know I worked 8 hours, but I do know the amount of hours I worked will be stored in the hours variable. And then I want to multiply. So multiply, we don't type in X like you might think. We type in a shift 8 asterisk. That little star symbol means multiply. And what am I multiplying by? Well, I need to multiply by how much money they make. And let's just assume they make minimum wage. So minimum wage right now is $15.80. This calculation will properly calculate the profit, and I can output this profit into a label. So I could say you made plus profit, and let's keep it simple. I'll just say you made however much profit they made, and I'll say dollars. So a quick run of this program. Of course, I forget my semicolon. Classic. 8, and I calculate, and I made $126.4. Okay, what's the issue here? Because this is not related to the video. I just wanted to run you through this to identify a problem. The issue is right here. This is called a magic number. It's called a magic number because it's a random number that's in your program, it's in your code, and this is not good practice. Because you have to imagine, if you know what this number means because we went through this program together and I told you that this number represents the minimum wage. But if I made this program and you did not follow this video at all, and you came to this line of code, you might be awfully confused what this number means. So that's where constants come in. Constants improve the readability of your code because as you make more intricate programs, you have to stop thinking selfishly. You will, at some point in your programming career, make programs with other people. You will read other people's code. Other people will read your code. And this is not good practice because if someone's reading your code, they have no idea what this number is doing here. So that's a lot of words I just said. We want to use constants to get rid of these magic numbers. You should not just have these numbers existing without a meaning. So how do I solve this? Well, I'm going to use a constant here. So instead of typing 1580, into my code, I'm going to go up here. What did that 1580 represent? Well, it represented the minimum wage, right? Now, I want to make this variable a constant because constants never change. Constants are not changed by the user. They are only changed on the back end. The minimum wage is not going to change in this program. So I get to make this variable a constant. So I put the constant keyword in front of it. All this does is it makes this variable, it makes the value of this variable never be able to change. I cannot change minimum wage because that's the definition of a constant, right? Something that's constant never changes. Now, the last thing I want to do is this naming convention is good for normal variables, but when you're dealing with constants, we completely change this up. Throw on the caps lock and use all capital letters. Minimum, why can't I spell? Minimum wage. However, we can't use camel case there, so if you have multiple words describing the name of your constant, you use an underscore. So this is a perfectly named constant. And all I've done is I've made a variable with a value that will never change because the minimum wage is not going to change at all when they're running this program. And why did I do all of that? So that I could come down here and I could erase the 1580 and I could instead use minimum wage. So now, if I handed you my code, my program, without this video, you would look at this line of code and you would know exactly what I'm trying to calculate. You would know that, oh, they're taking the hours and they're timesing it by the minimum wage. How much is the minimum wage? Well, it's $15.80. It's right up here. So we've changed absolutely nothing about the functionality of the program. We've completely changed the readability of your program, which I know it's hard to think about because no one's really reading your code except for me at this point. But this is such good practice. This is such a good habit to get into. You should completely avoid magic numbers and use these constants instead. So sorry for a longer video, but it's kind of an abstract concept. It's kind of something hard to wrap your brain around. But I hope you have a clear idea of when to use constants and how to create them and use them.